Okay. Hello and welcome back to my drawing journal for the month of October 2023. As always, my name is Freddie, and this journal will cover weeks 40 to 43. It was a bit of a off month, but we'll get right into it with week 40, Alice in Cyberland. Back in week 35, I did Cyberhood. It was a recreation of the character Little Red Riding Hood, or Little Red Cap, as a machine that was just a bit of a run-in with the wolf. The way I wanted to depict her was supposed to be more of a ruthless and cold machine than anything, and less of a helpless little girl. In any case, I liked the concept, so much that it made me want to start a series of fairy tale recreations into a similar aesthetic. As mentioned in previous weeks, I like when artists draw other artists' characters or put their own spin on characters from things such as fairy tales. Growing up, I tell my brother or even my sister to draw each other's characters just to see how we'd go about doing them. It's something I like doing with other artists from time to time still. In any case, my follow up to Cyberhood is to take on Alice in Wonderland. My goal was to take what I did in Cyberhood, where I converted the main character into a machine, and try to tell a story. As I started sketching, I was first leaning heavier towards giving her a dress or a skirt, some frill on the sides, an apron, and all that typically gives Alice to look like the typical Alice. I hesitated. One, because it felt too safe, and two, I already drew my characters very similarly and really wanted to get away from that. My goal was to show a wonderland in an urban setting surrounded by a fairy tale forest where crime is a normal thing and Alice is not afraid to be in the middle of it. So I messed around with some cyberpunk fashion, gave her a large coat and a one piece suit and bionic leg implants. While I was drawing this, the theme of the rabbit just kept swirling in my head. I thought of what if Alice had the speed of a rabbit or the ability to jump like a rabbit. I suppose the legs were a way to solve that. She has horn implants that serve as antennas. They were originally going to be rabbit ears, but I feel like I've drawn a lot of rabbit ears already. Speaking of rabbits, the wanted posters are of the rabbit that Alice meets early on and is late. Only this rabbit has a device that lets him jump through time and has been wanted for his crimes. Guess he can't be late if he has all the time available to him. I try to incorporate other parts of Alice in Wonderland that people often remember. The Cheshire Cat I incorporated into Alice herself as part that looks like a mask but is actually just part of her that flips over her mouth. I thought of it like the Cheshire Cat being the virus or personality AI that embeds itself into machines and augments them to be a bit more violent. At first, she wasn't going to have a mask, but I liked the concept of it. The tattoos were something I wanted to put more thought into, but I think the idea came out half baked. One was a rabbit holding an axe, and the other was a heart with a stake through it with the text Queen under it. I couldn't quite find a spot for the rabbit, and later changed it to be the graffiti on the wall. It fit better, in my opinion. I do wish I had thought of better tattoos, but it is what it is. To Alice's left is Hatter, a cybercrime genius, a machine himself, a boy, partner in crime to Alice. While I remember a lot of times the Mad Hatter is often shown as tiny, I decided to just make him a boy who always wears a mask because he lacks most of his jaw. Another part I wish I had gone harder on was her coat. I feel like if I have anywhere where I feel it didn't bring it together was the coat. It's got some of what I wanted to incorporate, but I guess it does the job. The text says rabbit hole, but it also makes it look like it says something else. Hatter's coat says tea time, while his hat says mad. The background was something I could have gone harder on while I was dabbling with some cyberpunk's fashion. I didn't quite lean into it that hard with for the background. Originally, it was going to be more of a neon wonderland, which in all honesty would have been pretty nice to see, just not for this one. In my mind, the coloring was always going to be during the day. Maybe I just didn't process how I could do cyberpunk during the day. When you think cyberpunk, your mind starts heading into neon. However, I could have gone a bit more dystopian and mechanical. While the background isn't exactly the strongest suit of the drawing because it's a bit safe, it still fits in my opinion. There were so many different ways I could have gone about it looking back. I could have added background characters or high rise storefronts. I guess the way I saw it, in this one is both Alice and Hatter are in the outskirts of the main city. I think in the future I'd probably like to do a follow-up of these two in a different setting or even a night one during one of their sprees. Overall, I think this drawing felt strong. I got some minor gripes like the way her hands rest on her thighs, looking a bit stiff, but I can't really knock it too much. It was a really good way to start the month, all things considered. Week 41, Cat Cafe Made. For week 41, I did a sketch of a cat made in a cat made cafe. My friends and I have been tossing the idea around for a trip to Japan for a while, and a cat made cafe has been suggested as a place to visit. Cat girls or girls dressed as cats is a fun concept in itself and can lend itself to interesting ideas. My execution of that was probably as simple as it gets: the cat paws, the maid outfit, and the simple background. I gotta say, the whole thing came off feeling very basic. I can't decide whether the shape, the anatomy, the clothing, the coloring, the lines, or the background are what made me feel put off by this. So let's start with everything I listed. First, the shape and the anatomy. Starting with the head, it's a bit too wide. I've noticed that I've had an issue as of late with drawing wide heads, and it makes characters have this balloon head with hair that isn't just coming out of their scalp and instead just looks placed on it. Hair is one of those things that you feel is simple in the beginning but becomes difficult to master when you want to incorporate more details to it. At least that's how I feel, in my opinion. I'm in the process of wanting to improve hair in general, making it flow and look natural as opposed to just something that goes on the head. Second, the clothing is as simple as it gets for a maid outfit. I didn't go too crazy on the design. Rather, I saw some references, and this seemed to be based on the more commonly used outfit. The coloring itself isn't on the bad side. It does what it needs to do. What I wish I had done is not relied on the lines to color this as a whole, but used a more paint on canvas approach and just applied layers to it. At the same time, what I could have also done is just layer more highlights over the ones I used. Thinking about it a bit more, I probably could have done this a million other ways if I really wanted to, so I shouldn't harp on the coloring too much. The lines were thin, but maybe it caused the whole thing to look too even. I like some uneven lines in my drawings usually, like thinner lines in the details, thicker lines around the face, and in an even thicker line to define the outline. This is why at the very end I added an outline to the layer to give it a bit more definition. Lastly, the background was something I saw was also a common setting. I didn't deviate too much from my references. It's fine, it's fitting, and quickly thrown together. My final thought on this: I'd like to revisit this concept again. It's a theme that I feel can be modified and taken a million different ways. Maybe I'll do a different cat girl every now and then to track progress. I don't think this is awful by any means because it absolutely has some things going for it. But for me, knowing what I've done in previous weeks so far, I do think I can do better. You know what? I'll use this as a stepping stone to make the next one better than this one. Week 42, Undead Maiden Rises. During week 42, I wanted to get a head start on what I felt was going to be a spooky month for drawing. Throughout the month, I tossed ideas around what I felt would be an appropriate Halloween drawing or drawings. Preliminary ideas in the first week of the month all slowly started dissipating. Four became three, three became two, and then finally two just became one. What I realized was that while I find thematic projects fun, they quickly become uninteresting if there's other ideas I'd like to explore first. I've had many ideas in the pipeline ready to go for a while now, and the idea of keeping a theme began feeling like a restriction. Yes, I really do like to draw witches, though drawing yet another witch felt like a cop out. I figure I can always do a Halloween inspired drawing at any time, but I understand it's just more fun to do when the season hits it. In any case, Undead Maiden Rises is what I ended up with. It actually started off as a witch, you can tell by the hat, but in reality, it's nothing special by any means. In fact, the whole thing, despite it being spooky themed, felt a bit uninspired. The drawing depicts a maiden that was mysteriously dug up from her grave and somehow resurrected to life again. You know, for being undead, she's really held up well. I gotta say. The coloring process was nothing fancy, same old process I've been using for months now, just a bit lazier. There wasn't much of a changing of brushes or for a lot of this, to be quite honest. In the end, I feel like I only did this drawing because I felt like I needed to fulfill a quota for the month. In reality, probably won't force myself to do something like this again. I think from start to finish, I slogged through it all just to call something finished. There are a lot of details I could have continued to add that would, quote, make more sense for an undead. I couldn't get this gnawing feeling of me just wanting to finish this and call it done than to make something amazing with it. This drawing started off as a simple sketch that I eventually just said, yeah, screw it. I'll just use it as this week's drawing. Am I proud of it? Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I might have been a bit careless with the coloring, but it still turned out okay. If I wanted to rework it, I'd go for a pose that has a lot more mystery and motion to it. Change the graveyard into, an actual graveyard and not just a tombstone and the cross in the ground. It might not be something I could look back and tell myself that this is what I have to show for, that I've improved on during my drawing journal. On the contrary, it might just be something I can look at and be like, I know what to avoid and I can still grow as an artist. Overall, an okay addition to the journal, yet will be something to consider to do, or rather not do, in the future. Week 43, Duality of Two Girls. Week 43 did away with anything spooky, and I decided on working on a concept I've been thinking of for a while. I've talked about Kaylee in previous weeks. I've talked about Sayako, but I haven't talked about them together and what their relationship is. The history of Kaylee and Sayako has been something I've been developing for a while. In early versions of my script, Kaylee and Sayako were major adversaries, rivals, all to fight for the affection of Sho. Kaylee was a typical anime childhood best friend Sho grew up with, and Sayako was the typical anime rich $1 million company heiress that wanted Sho for her greedy reasons. It was a different time. I had only watched a handful of animes back then, and a lot of them were just of a harem chasing a boy. There were scenes where Kaylee and Sayako would pass by each other in the hallway, and clouds would start forming, and the sky would get dark. It was silly, like a romantic comedy anime. Nowadays, the dynamic between Kaylee and Sayako is a bit deeper. Kaylee entering the high school Show and Sayako attend had expectations of it just being her and Show like old times, but we quickly found out how close him and, quote, some other girl had gotten. Not to mention, Show was not exactly happy for Kaylee disappearing suddenly, not knowing her reasons. So there was some misdirected anger towards Sayako. Sayako, on the other hand, grew close with Sho over the years, but didn't have much of a relationship with him outside of school thanks to everything she was always signed up for by her mother. After the passing of her father, they grew even closer as Sho was there for her. The link between Kaylee and Sayako is Sho. They try to get along, but Kaylee's stubbornness gets the best of her and doesn't let it happen as she feels they don't share any more common ground. That's how things start between them. The drawing itself is done in the style of Art Nouveau. If there's something I like just as much as the use of bold colors, it's clean, intricate patterns like the frames in an Art Nouveau piece. The piece originally started as a yin yang drawing where the you could flip the drawing and have one of the girls right side up and the other is upside down. It felt like a nice idea that could have worked, but felt this was better. I say this was done in the style of Art Nouveau, but really it's inspired by Art Nouveau. I'd say about 90% of the frame was done freehand, copied, flipped, and then hoped for the best. I'm almost a bit too impatient when I draw to make a clean frame and just try to rush it. I appreciate anyone who does have the patience to have this as their style and come up with beautiful, intricate frames. See, I work on an iPad on Clip Studio. It has all the tools I need for me to make something clean, symmetrical, and the look the way I want it to, but sometimes feels a bit cumbersome to get it done. Maybe if I took more time on it, I could, or even just have it done ahead of time. In their respective backgrounds, I chose certain flowers to represent what each of them are about. A gladiolus for Sayako, which represents integrity and strength, and a poppy for Kaylee that represents ambition. For the names, I tried doing the text myself. Believe me, I tried. Turns out I don't have the penmanship to do ye old English or something of that and do it justice. I think it turned out good for being my first real attempt. I'm a fan of Art Nouveau, but really never really got a chance to get my feet wet with it. Though I will say, after I finished, it made me want to do the rest of the girls in the same manner. It's definitely something for later. October was a tough month. I decided to end the month a week short to get a video out and let myself breathe a bit for the next one. The journal was going to go all the way to week 44, but things happening in real life just left me wiped out. I was busy with many things outside of drawing, like painting my house for the 2 weeks. In addition, I also lost my drive after my youngest kitten passed. Week 44 preview is Tariko v. Asmodee. I don't have this one fully thought out yet. The pose may also just change. I really don't know. I've been debating on what I'm going to do with the background for this as well. I may also make November a bit of a lighter month because of holidays. Maybe something like character profiles or something. I'm not sure yet. It's supposed to cover weeks 44 to 49, so it's a long month coming, and I still plan on keeping on with this journal regardless. I'm also realizing that I have 9 entries left to finish my journal for the year. Gaming wise, there wasn't really a whole lot going on. I did finish Sea of Stars. It definitely was amazing, so definitely give it a go if you're looking for a cozy RPG. As always, this is a reminder for you to just do your best. We all have our own things happening in our lives. The sudden turns that it takes can put you and keep you down. Just know that you have what you need within you to go forward. You got this. If anything you saw in this video inspired you to get back into drawing, or maybe something you didn't like and would like to let me know you didn't like it, put it down in the comments. Thanks for watching.